Welcome to Russia Unfiltered. I'm Jeremy Morris.
James Pearce.
And I'm Jonny Tickle.
So, probably, regardless of where you are in the world, you'll have seen that winter came back to Russia, and snow specifically came back with a vengeance in mid-January, reminding us that due to climate change, it's no longer a guarantee that winters will be snowy and very cold. But when it does decide to snow, boy, does it snow. Last week, there were these amazing pictures, and again, they continue this week. Last week, they were from Kamchatka, thousands of miles east of Moscow, where buildings, cars, and streets were covered in snowdrifts several meters high. Today, we're going to talk about these recent snowmageddons, how city authorities cope with the freeze-thaw cycle that's now typical of Russian winters. Big snowfalls are newsworthy because, arguably, because of climate change, making them much less frequent, but much more severe than in the past. Winter means urban authorities need an army of snow removers and salters. How does this work? What are the downsides? Icicles are another winter hazard that are well known in Russia. Is it true that in the continental climate of places like Russia, the much lower temperatures don't feel as cold as in a maritime climate like in England? Winter is also the enemy of infrastructure. People who visit Russia often remark on the high temperature in apartment blocks because of the district heating system. And of course, in Ukraine, we can see the outcome of that at the moment. We'll also talk about how much people pay for heating, perhaps, something that I'm personally interested in, and how this is a lot lower than other European countries. But first, we'll talk about our own feelings about Russian winter and the steps we each take to deal with it. So, gentlemen, maybe let's start with Jonny in Moscow.
Yeah, so this winter, I can't remember the last time we had a real proper winter like this. It's been many, many years. And the last few winters, I've been lamenting the fact that we've not had a winter. And now I feel like we've had 3 or 4 winters all in one. The snow level has been crazy. Now, luckily for me, because I've been here a good while, I already have my winter coat waiting for me and my gloves and everything. Because this is one of my sort of points I wanted to make in this video as a whole, really. People expect Russians to be really good in cold weather. I think Russians are crap in cold weather. They're just very well prepared for it. They've got their houses are warm. They have all the right clothes. But if they're a little bit cold, they do not like it. I think we're much better at being cold.
Yeah, I should probably tell you in Sverdlovsk region, which is where Yekaterinburg is. So there's warnings from the local government, stay home because the weather, extreme weather. What's quite interesting now, today, for instance, it's cold, but it's -4 officially. But the snow is pretty heavy and it's set to get heavier. There was a very big crash on one of the main roads today that comes into the city centre. We're not clear whether that was due to the snow, but it looks as though it probably was because there's been kind of like a collision, pretty serious one as well. 2 cars completely smashed up and caught fire. But
There's lots of that in Moscow too.
Yeah. So, but this now for obviously the Ural region. Yeah. So for those who are just listening, we're showing some images from Moscow of like collisions, 2 lorries there. But in the Urals, so a couple of years ago, we had a bitterly cold winter that was about -37, -40. So that repeats itself in this part of the country more consistently. And today, for instance, we're digging the car out of the snow. We have a shovel. We used to rent one for 100 rubles for half an hour. Now but yeah, you have to dig the tires out and you have to sort of smash up enough hardened snow because the car will end up getting beached if you don't do it properly. And it's hard work. Like it's manual labor. It's better than going to the gym, certainly. And we'll talk a bit about local government later as well, I suspect. But yeah, we get some pretty severe snow in the Urals. It's not Yakutia level, but it's a bit more serious than what Moscow is blessed with most years.
Yeah, this year though, Moscow it's been silly just how much snow we're getting. It's -15 here today. And
Okay. It's going to
it's
get to that
very,
during the
very,
week here. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the forecast here is like -20, -21 later in the week, so it's a real cold spell. Honestly, I don't mind it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll come to the feeling of the cold and humidity, relative humidity, maybe in a little bit. But yeah, I was just going to add my own two pennies worth, and yeah, I really enjoy a proper Russian winter, which is what we've got this year. But as you're both kind of indicating, there have been years when in the last 25 years when there's been relatively little snowfall by historical records, and relatively mild temperatures, still obviously colder than in Western Europe. So you talked about clothing and preparedness, and for me it's always a dilemma because of course homes and shops and businesses are well heated, sometimes heated to a much higher
I'm wearing
temperature
shorts
than,
right now. So,
yeah,
yeah.
than may even be comfortable. There's always a dilemma, how do you do layers, or do you do one very thick, insulated outer garment like a coat? Russians always talk about how it's important to cover one's rear and one's groin, because obviously you don't want to, obviously the urban myth or old wives' tale, whatever you want to call it, of that if you expose yourself to cold, you'll become infertile, all that stuff.
Don't sit on a
But
cold floor.
don't sit on a cold floor. But
Sit next to
certainly
an open window or you'll get sick, which is not
yeah,
true.
but
Yeah.
certainly when it comes to very cold weather, I would want to go probably for a very thick insulated coat that covers my butt, because you don't want a cold butt. But I would then go for maybe relatively few layers under that, because you want to take that off when you go in a building so that you're not sweating.
Yeah, that's what I do.
This is the dilemma.
I have a big ski jacket. I actually got it from Familiar because it was dirt cheap. I've had it for years now. It's a good one. I mean, it says officially it's good for up to -25, but I think another point here is depending on how cold it gets. So usually I would wear coat, jumper, something underneath. I very rarely get the long johns out, it has to be said.
See, there's a debate about long johns. Yeah.
If it's bitterly cold, then I'll do it. But as you say, you walk into the metro or you walk into a building and then it's like walking into a Turkish prison because the heating's been going
Have you
on.
been to a Turkish prison, James?
Yeah, I have been to Turkish prison.
So I've got some Uniqlo thermals, which I got obviously when Uniqlo was still in Russia before the war, and I put them on in December, and I don't take them off till April.
Yeah,
my anecdote is going to in Kaluga region, going to interview the Minister of Culture. Such a thing existed in those days. I'm not sure if it does now, for the region. And I had, and it was a bitterly cold winter. This is 15 years ago. And I was told, put on your thermal underwear, put on a thermal top, base layer. And then I wore a suit. And then I wore a very, very heavy coat. And I have never sweated so much in my life. And since then, I've never worn thermals under my clothes in Russia. Just not something that I would do. But, maybe if the temperature gets down to the absolute minimum record, do you know which year that was in the 20th century, guys?
Oh, was it 48, 49?
Close. 1940, apparently.
Oh, during the war.
January 19... Well, before the Great
Before the
Patriotic War.
Soviet Union got to the war.
The absolute minimum temperature in Moscow was recorded in 1940, and that was -42 degrees centigrade. And of course, historically, those cold winters are important because of the effect on the Second World War. Okay, moving on. What about, again, you can specifically refer to whether or not you think your local authorities are dealing with this well. James, over to you, perhaps.
Yeah, so a story from 2 years ago before we fast forward, because we had a particularly rubbish winter 2 years ago, and it was during the winter holidays, and so the salt grits never came out. And the snowstorm hit 2 days before everybody went back to work. There were queues going in to, like, it was really bad. You could not get to work. People driving Yekaterinburg. Why does that matter? Well, it was just ahead of the presidential elections, and as you're sat in the traffic, there's billboards kind of for all of these presidential candidates, but people were not blaming Putin or whoever the nobodies running against him were. They were blaming the local governor, and they, because local government should have dealt with that. And it's the same now. If you read the local newspapers, there has been criticising the preparedness. A lot of marshrutka routes, marshrutka like a minibus, they've been closed off because they can't get down the roads because the snow hasn't been cleared. So for a lot of people, that means they can't really get home, or they've got to then walk significantly. And again, if you're wrapped up in a few layers here, I mean, you can walk around for about 20 minutes outside, even in all of that. When it's in the severe, because last week it was about -37, this week -20 odd, something like that. But no, I mean, local, at least, and again, I'm speaking of the Sverdlovsk region, they do hold local government to account for that because they are directly responsible for it. Same with burst pipes. Few regions over the last few years, pipes have burst. Now the Duma, this is the Duma's own reporting, the committee found that about 80% of pipes across the country are in need of repairs because they were, and Jeremy will know more about this because of the work he does, the conditions under which they were built, they were not built to last, a lot of the kind of insulation things. And you'll see, and Jonny can talk a bit about this, a lot of the gas pipes come out of the ground, and you'll often be walking or driving alongside these big pipes on the side of the street or driving through them to get into the courtyard kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, you can even see they're falling apart and they don't really seem to get fixed. Go on, John.
Well, listen, I live in Moscow, so I can say that I think the local authorities have done a great job in reality. I'm very, very lucky in that way to live here rather than another city. So what tends to happen is on the days where they have extreme snowfall, it's terrible for walking around and everything. But then you wake up on the next day and all the roads are cleared, all the paths have been cleared. I would say in terms of convenience and comfort of getting around the city, Moscow's done a great job. And I haven't heard of any problems with heating in Moscow this winter. I know there have been in previous years, like you said, burst pipes. That's like the number one thing you hear about. I have not heard any about them this year, even with the extreme cold. So that's a good thing, I suppose. But yeah, I have a great privilege to be living in Moscow, where they have thousands of, well, let's be honest, very, very low paid government workers who make the city very, very comfortable for everybody else. We're in a great position of privilege here.
Yeah, just to pick up on that before we move on to a related topic. So you've basically got three things going on for those that can't really visualize what we're talking about. You've got mechanical equipment removing snow to the side of the roads, and again, that doesn't require high technology. It just requires a lot of drivers and a lot of plant. And then you've got yard workers who are employed by the local authority or by a management company for that building, whose job it is to both preempt by applying de-icing what they call reagents, which is generally a chemical, right? Sodium chloride, calcium chloride, and a corrosion inhibitor. They're applying them to sidewalks, pavements, entryways, and of course, again, those reagents are also applied mechanically by machinery onto the roads. And then your classic image of usually Central Asian immigrant worker with a shovel, right, with a big wide shovel removing snow, and or a hammer if it comes to icicles, right? Or if like we said in the intro, the problem is freeze, thaw, freeze, right, which creates black ice. So you need to remove stuff
Yeah.
But I was
Just,
Johnny. You want to say
yeah, you
something?
said just before I forget to and pick up the Moscow thing. So one of the things they do in Moscow is each region like picks like a certain area or street where they dump all the snow in one place. And basically means that a road is shut for the day before it goes into the snow melters. So I went to one a couple of weeks ago after the first major snowfall here in near I think I can't remember what the street's called, like Miuska maybe. It's in the north anyway, but this north of the center. And I actually made a YouTube. I made a little short when I was there. Let's see if I can play it now. Yeah, here we are. They've put a pile. They basically closed off a whole street. You can see on screen if you're looking. The whole street is just a part. It's closed. It's all the snow in that part of the city.
That's going to be
Yeah.
like 1 million tons, probably.
Yeah. So that's what they do here in Moscow. So I mean, the inconvenience a few people, but
So is that
they
going to
make it great for a
go
lot of people.
into a snow melter, or is it going to be put on trucks and taken out of the city, which is what they used to
Oh,
do?
so that was 2 weeks ago. And after a couple of days after I filmed that, it was all gone. It'd all been melted.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting as well, if you live in a small town or village, you very often don't get these things, and the local community will often have to, dig a road out or a path in kind of thing, or up to the main road. It can be very dangerous and we're not talking, middle of Siberia. We're talking, a few tens
No.
kilometers outside of Moscow here.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced this, and I mean, I don't think it's particularly worth talking about at any length, but yeah, it's kind of an indication that it is unusual now, in that many of the times that I've been in the village in the depths of winter, December, January, there has been almost no snow, and so then when it does come, yeah, sometimes there's a delay. I mean, even in very rural areas, snowplows will come, and in fact, they cause a lot of damage to the roads
Yeah,
and to the side of the roads, but there's often a delay.
I will talk
I
about
mean,
one of my
it's
pet peeves as well, and you
Go ahead.
see this more in Moscow and, well, just general big cities, because people that have dogs, that they don't really look like dogs, they look like rodents, and the dogs wear shoes in the winter. It's like, dogs, in my opinion, they don't need shoes and coats, but actually in Russia, now one of the reasons that people buy shoes for their dogs is because of the salt grit. It hurts the dogs to walk on, and so. Yeah, that was one thing that kind of surprised me when I got there. I'm like, well, okay. I mean, a coat in -30, I can kind of understand, but shoes, come on. But yeah,
Yeah, and
really hurts
it's
them.
because of these reagents, right? Because they
Yeah,
are toxic.
they're
Or
toxic
maybe
as well. Yeah,
toxic is not the right word, but it's a strong chemical, right? And I mean, again, preparing for this video, I looked up the stats. It's about 350,000 tons that Moscow uses each year.
yeah,
But actually, is it a lot? It's actually less than New York, for example. Um, and but of course, can have a very negative effect on the environment. But again, it can also cause burns on animals
yeah.
who are touching it. I was also going to then touch on that one thing that will also be familiar to anybody that's experienced is the effect on shoes, especially leather shoes.
Winter
It
shoes.
destroys your leather shoes over time.
Yeah, you want to. I mean, I've had my winter boots for a couple of years now, Skechers. I just got a pair of. They're doing. They're serving me well. If you go to. I did this a few times. I was like, I need to buy a new pair of winter boots. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll do. And then I never did. And then it snowed. So I then went to Ashan and picked up a cheap pair for about 2,000 rubles, and they lasted a season. So you don't do that, is my advice. You actually.
Are these, James, when by snowshoes, do you mean like you would wear après-piste when you're skiing, or are you talking about a different kind of shoe?
I'm talking about boots you would just wear walking on the street. So they're insulated either with fur or with something else. designed to keep your feet warm, but
With
also
this.
to keep, like what John's got. Yeah, so
Like
they
that,
keep
yeah.
the snow out as well, and the wet, more importantly, keep the wet out.
But Jonny, are you finding that the reagents are attacking those shoes that you just showed us?
Yeah, I just need to wash them every time I come home.
So
Yeah,
you wash them, yeah, to
I
get rid of the
wash
salts.
mine as well. Yes, well, or my wife.
Okay,
does.
next. Get somebody else to do it is always better. Next question then, because this is always comes up, I think, among foreigners who experience both Russian continental winters and, well, not actually only foreigners, but Russians as well. Like you said in the intro, Jonny, Russians complain about the cold. Is it true? Do you think it's true that because there's is it true that there's less humidity in continental winters and therefore you don't feel the cold as much as you would in the much higher temperatures of winter in somewhere like Britain? What's your takes on this?
Russia is a very big country. So I don't think we can really talk about Russia as a whole, because if you've experienced winter in St. Petersburg, let me tell you, it's not mild.
No.
Because I guess that's a humidity thing. But a lot of the time, though, in Siberia, really the coldest parts, a lot of their winters are quite comfortable compared to winters in humid parts of the world. So I definitely think it is true that humidity makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, when I lived in Moscow, I think it only got below -30 maybe once. Got to -32, and your chest kind of hurts because everything contracts. Feels like someone's pinching your cheeks or your ears. That's what the bitter cold feels like as well, and the insides of your legs get quite destroyed. But no, I mean, I prefer it when it's -20 because it's bearable. The snow is not melting and turning to slush and ruining your clothes. That's another thing. You can't really wear light clothes in the winter because the snow will ruin them. But again, I've been in I think, it was -38 or something, the coldest it's ever been here. You can't be outside for long in that. You just can't. Be that serious. But then again, what I've never done, and it is on my bucket list, is to go to the Arctic, to the Russian north. Now there, and again, you also have a lot of nomad tribes in the north who do not have modern amenities, and they do live in those wigwams and things like that, and they find a way. But up there again, Murmansk, my wife's been. You just don't see people on the street in the winter.
I've been.
You've been, yeah. So John, did you go in the winter?
I went in November.
Oof. But yeah,
I mean, the problem's not the cold; it's that it gets dark in the.
And it gets very dark. Yeah,
just after lunchtime, it was barely any sunlight. But I do highly recommend that people go. It's a very interesting place to go, especially if you go right to the north. I went to the the old fishing village, Tariberka, I think it's called, something like that.
Well, it's famous, isn't it, as a tourist destination now?
Yes, it is now. But I went there after seeing it in a movie. What's the movie called? Leviathan. I saw it in Leviathan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was in that movie. But yeah, obviously a different experience in the far north. We shouldn't generalize. I just wanted to say that apparently the humidity thing is a bit of a myth. What it's about, I guess, is that in a continental climate, you have more trapped high pressure weather, so you just get more sunshine during the day, however long that day is, than you do in maritime climate. That is
I've
typical
always
of
noticed as well,
the
when
UK.
it's sunny in the winter, like there's no clouds in the sky, it tends to be colder than if it's clouded over. I don't know if you've found that, but that's always a sign to me, it's going to be, or if the sky's pinky, at a certain time of the day.
Okay, let's move on. I wanted to talk about district heating, because again, how is life possible in cities in Russia? It's because of district heating, and as we've already said, this is a great invention, but it also has its downsides, as Jonny was saying earlier, and James, you were saying, there's a lot of exposed infrastructure, there's a lot of corrosion, when it goes wrong, it goes badly wrong, and you have these big outages because basically you've got large volumes of hot water being pumped underground and overground, relatively large distances, right? It's just not really natural. It's not really easy to do that without encountering all kinds of technological problems. But also, these, people's heating plants depend on electricity as well. People's lives in winter depend on electricity, and there've been a lot of electricity outages, not only in Ukraine but also in Russia because of this aging infrastructure. So it's not just the water pipes, but it's also the cold effects, transmission of electricity, because if you get this freeze thaw, you get icicles forming on transmission pylons and wires, and the electricity goes out, and then you can't, of course, use electrical heating, which, of course, if I was in the countryside, I'm generally going to be using electrical heating, just because it's easier to install. But that's the one thing that I've noticed in the last 10 years, that in the winter, the electricity goes out a lot, and it can have a really, really big impact on people that are using electrical heating, which is maybe 30% of people in the village where I live. So there's also the reason I wanted to talk about district heating, guys, is because it seems to come up all the time in discussions about the supposed backwardness or the supposed problems of Russia. And it kind of drives me bonkers because, yeah, okay, it's a Soviet thing, but it kind of was a solution to rapid urbanization in the Soviet period, and I just don't see it going away if we continue to have millions of people living in really, really densely populated cities in relatively extreme climates, right? So what do you want
what's
to
the
say?
criticism?
I don't want to use the T word, but it keeps coming up on Twitter as a way of bashing, Russia. Oh, look at how
Sorry,
backward
what's the
they
T
are.
word?
Twitter.
Oh, okay.
It is Twitter.
Yeah.
I can't even remember now, but it always comes up and people are, Russia's so backward. Look at how they heat their country. Look at how inefficient it is. And it is. It does have a lot of losses. But surely, people don't put it into perspective. Look at the way that we heat our houses in Britain. It's not very efficient. It's no more efficient than district heating. Oh, yeah, and that's the other point it's used basically to say, oh, look at these backward Soviet countries, right? When actually, again, in the Nordics, where I also work, right? My home in Denmark is heated through district heating exactly the same way that houses are heated in Moscow.
I mean, I don't know, like our dacha doesn't have it has electricity, but the heating, we put wood in the fire. It's not a very big building, it does just fine.
So you have a traditional stove?
We do in the dacha, yeah. I mean, one thing I will say, so our flat, now you can adjust the heating temperature, whereas with older flats, the heating just comes on and it stays on. So like
That's the argument. I think that was what the argument was about.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't it inefficient? Aren't they backward because you can't adjust the temperature?
Well, I don't know. Freezing to death isn't so good either, really.
And that's true of some old Soviet apartments, that the heating is on full basically from October to April, and you can't do anything about it.
Go on, John.
Well, I mean, I do agree with those people that it is very annoying. So I don't know how it works in other cities, but in Moscow, it gets turned up and turned down based on conditions. It's not just one temperature for the whole time. But it is always too hot. Everywhere is too hot. So you do get this sort of odd situation where the heating's on and you have to open the window, which is a pretty constant thing where you'll be sat here just sweating like crazy. So you open the window where it's like -20 outside at the same time you've got heating, just to like sort of a decent temperature. But you can control that in a way. The problem is in other places, like on the metro, for example, where it's boiling hot and everyone's in a big coat. You can't just say, hey, can someone turn the heating down, please? Or can someone open a window, please? Because you just have zero control over it.
On the buses, that's quite, people might open a window on the bus, particularly trolley buses as well. I was just also kind of, what was I thinking about that you just reminded me of something? Oh, it's just gone. What is it? Oh, the balconies, which are ice boxes as well. There's no heating on the balcony, even in modern buildings. I mean, what I do, when I buy alcohol, I sometimes just leave it outside the window, like outside in the elements, better than putting it in the freezer. It's quicker. Stick your beers there. Don't leave them for too long because they will frost
Don't
up.
leave them for too long, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
so I've got a very quick video for you here if we're talking about transport. It's only 3 seconds, so you'd have to very quickly.
packed in like sardines.
This is
Yeah.
a train
the
in Moscow.
Yeah.
Yeah, where there's literally snow inside because people have opened the windows.
Yeah.
Very often on trains, historically, they would the windows would be locked in winter, and you'd be suffering in the heat in a long distance train journey.
Yeah, getting the train in winter's good fun, actually, especially if you're going cross country and you're on a sleeper train, I must admit. I mean, it's an experience you can't really get in a lot of other countries. And I mean, again, the historian in me as well, like Russian winter, I mean, there's a lot we could kind of say here, but there's kind of myths, the mother of God, which in Orthodox Christianity, that's what they call her, places a blanket over the nation to protect the country, and then you have, Second World War and Napoleon comparisons coming in. That sort of stuff. I mean, it has greatly impacted the Russian psyche and Russian literature and also history. We cannot deny that. There's also a lot of things that are just not true. I mean, wasn't there something about dropping water out of planes in... Did anyone hear that one? No, during the war, they would just drop water from planes to freeze the Germans. That's obviously not true.
I didn't know about that, no.
Yeah, I mean, you could... I mean, there are people who will insist that's true, but I mean, again, if you think of how cold it was by the time, you'd have to fly the plane so low for that to work. Yeah.
Certainly, yeah. It's important to Russian history, general winter in the Second World War. How many equivalent divisions did those harsh winters give the Soviet troops? And the fact that, the Germans were not given enough winter equipment and were not expected, in fact, to need it. But I wanted to, again, just finish up with this urban heating systems and how it's perceived as, inefficient, backward, blah, blah, blah. It does actually then relate to a point that you made, James, which is that there is this big infrastructural kind of overhang problem that is a big political issue in Russia, and that, at least 50%, in some places 80% of heating infrastructure has reached the end of its exploitable life and is not being replaced.
I think it's around 20% need urgent replacing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Close to that figure. And again, this is the Russian government's own estimates we're using here.
Yeah, and I looked up Vologda, just as a northern, relatively rural, but still Central Russian, European region, and it's got 1,800 kilometers of heating pipes. Half of them require replacement urgently, but they still have to be used because they can't be shut down. You can't shut them down. You can't transition. The other point that it's worth maybe making, you can't transition to individual gas boilers, because that would also require massive infrastructural investment to retrofit that. You can't use electrical heating because that would just destroy the grid.
Heat pumps.
Yeah, where would you put the heat pumps for all of this very, very dense building? And then I also looked up what are the actual heat losses of district heating. It's only 20% from what I could find if it's done properly, like in the Nordics. So actually, maybe it's a bit of a myth that this is a terrible way to heat buildings.
Yeah.
What do our audience think? Because clearly on social media, it's this stereotype of, the path dependency of the Soviet period that is a bad thing, that people seem to think. I mean, I used to work with a guy in human geography at the University of Birmingham, and he made his career on talking about district heating and how it was a kind of infrastructural negative legacy for Eastern European countries. Stefan Buzarovsky, who's now a big academic star at Manchester University, he writes a lot about energy.
So, I mean, given current affairs and everything that's happening in Ukraine right now, I assume Ukraine has a similar system to what Russia does as a legacy from the Soviet Union. Is that right?
Yeah, and so, of course, Ukraine is in the same position that you can't really quickly transition away from this dependency on district heating. Of course, they have had all of these. They have had innovations, which is the same kind of thing you see in other countries where there are infrastructural problems, which is people go to a heating point that could be in a hospital or a public place, right? But I wanted then to, unless anybody else wanted to talk about something to do with that, I also wanted to talk about another elephant in the room, which is how much Russians pay for heating.
Huh.
And I did some calculations, because obviously I know how much people pay for energy in Denmark. I know how much people pay for energy in Britain. They pay more than anybody else in Europe.
Yes.
We're specifically talking about heating one's living space. And I worked out that Russia has the highest consumer subsidy for central heating of any country in the world. And do you want to have a guess at how much less than, on average in the UK, people in Russia pay for their central heating?
I'm gonna go with about 50 or 60% because I know how much my bills are in both countries.
Yeah. Johnny?
Yeah, I think people in the UK pay more than double.
Yeah, it's more than double. I mean, do you know how much you guys pay in your respective flats?
Unfortunately, that's
in
not
Russia?
my area of responsibility.
It's
Yeah,
always nice not to know.
well, so the way it works in our building is you get like a utility. It includes everything, so we pay everything at once in one kind of hit. But I think it's something like 2,500.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Just for that, the water's a bit less. And
£25
yeah, it's 25
or
quid for heating.
$32, something
That's
like
just
that.
for the heating, yeah, $32. The electricity is basically nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm putting the electricity aside because obviously that is a separate bill.
Yeah.
And most Russians are billed specifically on отопление, heating, right? That will be a different line. And your experience then, James, I think is pretty typical. I checked some different areas. Yeah, it'd be about somebody that I know for a 2-room apartment in Moscow was paying £20 a month.
Yeah, well, just a note though, in lots of apartments, heating is paid 12 months of the year. It's averaged over the 12 months. It doesn't go up in winter and go down to zero in summer.
I thought that as well, Johnny, but then I looked at some of the recent changes in the law, because obviously it's highly regulated, as you would understand. And apparently they're trying to move away from spreading it over the year for some reason.
Perhaps they are, but lots and lots of people are still paying for the heating 12 months of the year, just averaged out. I suppose it depends on apartment building, but that's the thing that happens.
to, yeah. I remember my old Moscow flat, it was always pakvitancy, and then I would get a figure later, which, if you speak Russian, because you listened to our last episode, you'll know what that means, so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's also not necessarily unusual in other countries that have district
Not
heating.
at all, no.
In Denmark, we also pay that, and then it's recalculated based on the actual use later. But yeah, basically, it can be as little as 1/10 of the cost of what British people pay for heating. So, as you know, you both said double. It's even worse than that. So it's highly subsidised. And I had to do various boring
And it's also worth
calculations
pointing out
about
here
kilowatts.
that the UK, where we're from, has imported more LNG, liquefied natural gas, than it has given in money to Ukraine since the start of the war. So Britain is still using Russian gas, so is the European Union, despite recent bans on it. But again, we're paying more for it because of the sanctions workarounds. So I think we've made that point in another one, but it is just worth pointing out here.
We mentioned that before, and
Yeah.
I'm not an energy specialist in my job, but yeah, my understanding is that this is the year where, officially at least, no EU countries will be importing Russian gas, except I think perhaps there's not, it's not actually set in stone. So if for whatever reason countries like Slovakia and Hungary, because of course they'd be the ones that we'd be talking about, if they wanted to, I think they still could. But I think they were supposed to turn off their connector, weren't they, with the Druzhba, the friendship pipeline.
Well, Moldova,
by the end of last year.
Ukraine, but Moldova has now switched. It gets 90% of its electricity from Romania.
That's right, yeah.
But again, different grids there. There are problems with, and prices in Moldova have skyrocketed as well. It's worth pointing out that that's why there have been, and again, there have been protests in Moldova. Maybe the Kremlin has had a hand in that. We don't know. That's not the point of the podcast. But yeah, energy bills going up in the post-Soviet space is not confined to Russia or to,
No.
Sorry, John.
Well, the point being that Russian consumers are still protected for political reasons from the real cost of energy, including their own energy. LNG, just to finish on that point that you made, James, because you've made that point in a previous podcast. We are kind of people who talk about European transition, decoupling. I called it yesterday when I was talking on a different podcast, decoupling from Russian energy. Well, actually, it's a bit of a myth because, yes, we're still, as you said, dependent for the moment upon liquid natural gas from the United States, which is now a massive supplier to Europe.
Agree. What else should we say about it? Go on, John. Yeah.
Yep. I want to I want to show some fun videos now.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on to fun videos.
I'm sure we've all seen crazy pictures and videos from Kamchatka. And I think I want to show a couple of them here because we've had lots of snow in Moscow. Lots of the countries had snow, but Kamchatka's it's been silly just how much snow that they've had.
Yeah.
So here's a video of a woman opening her front door to find that snow is blocking the entire front door. So this is the experience of people in Kamchatka. So yeah, we can moan in our own respective cities, but we're living in the height of luxury compared to what these people are dealing with now. It's a real tough situation. But thank God for work from home, because there's a lot of people who'd be stuck. This is one of the benefits of COVID there. Yeah, I mean, there's numerous videos you can see from Kamchatka and the Far East where the snow has just been unbelievable. It's really like taken out basically the entire cities.
You can tell this isn't AI as well, which is another point I suppose because there were a lot of AI fakes out there. And it's quite clear from this that it's legit, is what we should say.
That's why I wanted to do this podcast, because it was funny that one of the self-proclaimed Russia experts, who will remain nameless, on Twitter, posted something that was very obviously AI and couldn't work. He couldn't see that it was AI.
Is that the one that blocked me? Or
No, 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 no.
Oh,
That's
okay.
somebody that basically has made a very lucrative career,
So here's
being
another one from
a Russia
Kamchatka.
expert.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
But there was some obvious, yeah, the point being that these are real, but there
Yeah,
was some
there
very
were some
obvious
obvious fakes.
AI ones, which were
Yeah.
spectacular, but still, you can't call yourself a Russia expert if you don't spot the AI snowdrift. And on that note, I've run out of topics.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is, I guess I want to know is that when you move to Russia as a foreigner, the first thing people ask you about is winter. It's people seem to have this idea that it's just always cold and always wintry here. And what I would say to people who are considering moving to Russia, one of the great things about being here is you get all 4 seasons in a way that we do not in the UK, where it seems to be autumn for 12 months. Here you really get the heat of the summer too. I believe it's Yakutsk maybe that has the biggest difference between the lowest and the highest temperatures.
Probably.
Like minus 35 and plus 35 on like a normal year. It's like
and that's unimaginable.
That's standard.
It's unimaginable unless you experience it. I always start my my program in my university with stuff about climate, the Russian climate. Well, that extreme part of the Russian climate, and people just can't imagine it until they experience it.
Yeah,
if they're from Western Europe.
If you go to the Urals or to Siberia, it's very hot in summer and there's big mosquitoes everywhere and it can be unbearable. But no, I mean, the winter is a special time in Russia. I enjoy it because you do different activities and, yeah, if you go to St. Petersburg in the winter, you can do a lot of inside activities and all the museums there. The outside activities, again, great. I mean, not just sports. Just having a barbecue in the snow is great fun because you can stand by the heat and just, well, again, it gives you an opportunity to be outside. It also makes you, I guess, a bit more resilient because you have to figure things out. Like we just saw the Kamchatka thing there. You have to, when that happens to your house, you have to be pretty creative to find a way out of that one.
Yeah, and you have to have, if you live in the countryside, you have to have a diesel generator. If you've got any sense, stuff like that, you have to have snow chains, things like that.
So if we're sort of wrapping up, I'd like to finish off by giving some YouTube recommendations linked to this topic. So there's a guy on YouTube and Instagram called Vyacheslav Romanov. His name's Panda Sakha, as in the Sakha Republic, as in Yakutia. And his videos are amazing. It shows life in the middle of nowhere in Yakutia, how he lives. Basically, he just pops out of the house and digs fire in some ice and goes fishing. His cooking, really amazing. And there's also on YouTube, there's a girl called Maria Solko, Solko. She lives in Yakutsk. And basically all of her videos are about doing this thing in minus 60, doing this thing in minus 50. And she gets millions of views for lots of her videos because it's unimaginably cold there in the winter. So I would recommend, if you're interested in knowing about extremes of cold in Russia, those are 2 recommendations I would give.
James, anything to wrap up with?
No, just go to the cold parts. Don't just hang around in Moscow. Yeah, go to Murmansk, pop over to Novosibirsk, or to Yekaterinburg, like if you really want to experience a proper winter, and just be careful. If you're not a very good driver or careful driver, then yeah, this probably isn't for you.
Always make sure your driver has either snow chains or snow tires.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think we'll end. Thanks for watching, everybody.